Hey there, everyone. My name is Kelvin, and I'm JavaScript engineer and Devrel at Treblle. Today, I'm going to be having a guest teach us how to build an admin panel in Laravel with Filament. So let's meet our guest. His name is Dan. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm awesome. First of all, thank you for your time to come teach me how to build an admin panel in Laravel with Filament and, of course, our broader Laravel audience. So, before we get started, let's meet who Dan Harrin is. So, who you are, what you've been doing, what you currently do, and why you're teaching us building an admin panel with Laravel Filament.
So I work as a software engineer for a company called Stagent, and we build booking software for artists and booking agencies in the music industry. And primarily, we work with the tool stack, and that is the tech that Filament is built on. And I'm in the core maintainer team of Filament, and yeah, it's built on the tool stack. It's an admin panel um, that's built of several different components. So it's like a form builder and a table builder and a notifications package, and they combine together to build admin panels. Um, and today we'll be building an admin panel um using Filament. And this is a good guide for anyone who hasn't used Filament before. I'm going to be running through the key concepts of Filament. Um, and how it interacts with your Laravel models and migrations.
Nice. So, you mentioned the tall stack. Can you just go into it a little bit? Like, what is the tall stack and why did you build Filament for the tall stack?
So the tool stack is an acronym. So it stands for Tailwind, Alpine, Laravel, and Livewire. Laravel also is obviously our PHP framework.
Mm-hmm.
Livewire is a layer on top of Laravel, and that allows us to build dynamic interfaces with Laravel and Blade.
Okay.
Alpine.js is a small JavaScript library that we use to power dropdowns and form components and stuff. And Tailwind is a CSS framework that we use to style everything in our admin panel and all of the separate packages as well.
Oh.
And I really enjoy the tool stack because I feel like I'm the most productive as a Laravel developer when I'm working in tool. But that is exactly why Filament exists, because a lot of people who enjoy the tool stack are looking for products that use the tool stack, one that we can be familiar with when we work with that stack, and yeah, essentially allows us to be very productive.
Mhm.
So that's why Filament exists, and that's why it's on the tool stack.
Nice. So essentially, Filament is sort of like a, should I say, for the lack of a better term, a meta framework for the tall stack? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Mm.
it's a meta framework. I'd say it's a meta framework built on the tool stack, and it's a framework for building apps in Laravel. It
Okay.
doesn't just need to be admin panels; it can be um, any app,
Okay. Wow.
primarily CRUD based.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, you can put any custom content within your Filament app as well.
Okay.
Um, and in version 3, which is coming up in a few months,
Mm-hmm.
um, you'll be able to actually install multiple apps within Laravel.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have an admin panel that's then completely separate from your user facing app, and
Mm-hmm.
you can basically run an entire SaaS just based on Filament with two separate areas,
Mm.
and no uh, basically complete separation of all of your code between those two areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's very interesting because I feel it's gonna make you move faster since you already have
Yeah.
all the components to build these sort of applications. So it's cool.
Yeah. I think as we get going, you'll
Mm-hmm.
see how fast it is to
Yeah.
build an interface that might have taken you uh, a few hours at least to be able to set up all of the build process and the form components and style them and make them all work together. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it really is a time saver.
Cool. Yeah, I think so. Should we dive right into it? So, first of,
Absolutely.
so we are building an admin panel, right? So, what is the admin panel for? So, like, do you have a project we're building?
Yeah, so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about projects, and I thought of one that I haven't seen done before in tutorials,
Okay.
which is a an admin panel that could be used to run like a vet practice.
Oh.
So animals come in,
Mm-hmm.
you can record patients and their owners, and then you can record what treatments an animal's had at the practice. So there's
Sounds
kind of
fun.
3 layers of relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll be interesting to see how we deal with each of those layers
Mm-hmm.
to basically create the best UX possible for the person using the system.
Nice. Sounds like fun. I'm definitely going to enjoy this walkthrough. So, yeah, should I share your screen now? Let's get right into it.
Let's
Okay.
do it.
Yeah, that's your screen. Here we are.
So we're going to start with 3 models and migrations. So we need an owner, we need a patient, and we need a treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And an owner can have many patients because it can have many pets, and a pet can have many treatments.
Okay.
So let's make 3 models and 3 migrations. So PHP Artisan, make model owner,
Okay.
and make a migration.
Yeah. So I guess you have the project set up originally. So I think it's just a normal Laravel project
It's
at
just
this
a standard
point.
Laravel app.
Okay.
I just installed Laravel, so you don't have to watch me do that.
Okay, cool.
I haven't installed Filament yet, so you'll see
Oh,
the Filament
perfect.
installation process.
Yeah, perfect.
Owner, and we need patient,
Patience.
and we need a treatment.
Framework.
Let us first define these migrations so that we know exactly how the database is going to look for this.
Mm-hmm.
I always think that's a very nice place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Owners, I think just basic contact information is probably useful. So email, name, phone number,
Mm-hmm.
the name. We can say the email and the Copilot's going to predict what I'm going to do, what I'm doing here. Um,
Yeah, I
the
can see.
owners and then the patients. So we need probably a date of birth for the
Mm-hmm.
patients,
Mm-hmm.
and we need the patient's name. We need to record what type of animal they are. So potentially like a cat and a dog or a rabbit or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So a type. Just use that as a string for now. Um, and we need to connect them to an owner. So let's use a foreign ID.
Okay.
You there?
Oh,
Owners, and let's delete patients when their owner is deleted.
no, okay, cool.
And now treatments. Treatments probably just need a description, which is like
Mm-hmm.
going to be short text.
Yeah.
And we need notes about the treatment, maybe what went on during the treatment, and this can be optional.
Mm-hmm.
And we can store patient, and we probably need like a price, so we can store money in our database as well and handle that in the admin panel.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually use an unsigned integer for costs and currency, and then
Mm-hmm.
I use a cast on the model to be able to then transform a small value into an integer and back,
Mm-hmm.
just because it makes using an integer is regarded as better practice in the development community.
Yeah.
Let's now set up our models. So I think first thing we should do is unguard them all. Filament has its own protections with regards to um, fillable, guarded mass assignment
Mm-hmm.
um, errors, and essentially we don't need them to be guarded when we're just using Filament.
Okay.
So let's just unguard them.
Okay.
And let's just quickly set up the relationships as well. So the owner, this is gonna have many patients.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Patient is going to have one owner,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also going to have many treatments.
Okay.
And a treatment just has one patient. Okay, let's just get autocomplete. Now let's create a resource for our patients. So a resource is essentially a collection of pages that we'll use to manage a model. So a resource is made up usually of a list page, a
Mm-hmm.
create page, and an edit page.
Yeah.
So in this case, it will be a patient resource. We're going to have a page to list all the patients. We're going to have a page to create a patient, and we're going to have a page to edit a patient. And
Mm-hmm.
everything in our admin panel today will be done on those 3 pages. So you'll be able to manage the treatments and the owners from those 3 pages.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you could then go on and add a treatment resource or an owner resource and manage that, but I don't think that's necessary today
Mm-hmm.
for demonstration purposes.
Yeah.
Let's make a resource for patients. So PHP Artisan make Filament resource patient. I didn't install Filament.
Yeah.
um,
Yes, you did
let's
not.
install Filament.
Yeah, let's do that.
Composer require Filament.
Okay.
And that installs everything.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to want to migrate a database so that we can add a user. And let's make a user for our database. So PHP Artisan make Filament user. All this is doing is it's just replacing what you would normally do in Breeze. I mean, you could do it in Breeze, but we don't need Breeze or Jetstream here, so I'm just going to make one through the command line.
Okay.
Now we can create our model, and we can log into our admin panel. You can
Nice.
access Filament using the /admin route.
Mm-hmm.
Filament, log in, and here's Filament. This is a dashboard that you see. You can remove these widgets and add your own charts and stats about the admin panel.
Mm-hmm.
And our patients table is here. Doesn't have any
Mm-hmm.
content in it at the moment. We don't have any columns to find or anything like that. So let's start by creating the new patient page, because to be able to see patients in this list, we need a patient anyway. So it seems a
Yeah.
sensible place to start.
Mm-hmm.
This is the page. The page has a heading and some buttons. And inside here, we're going to add a form.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, you just add a form to your resource, because the
Okay.
form is then shared between the edit and the create sections.
Okay.
So our patient resource. See our form here? Uh,
Yeah.
Forms are made up of form components, and form components can be nested within each other. So you can have like a text input and a
Mm-hmm.
select, and then maybe you might have a card, and it groups all fields into that card, and then you have other fields within that card. And this can basically be a deeply nested structure of form components that are then rendered on the front end. I'll show you what I mean by first adding a text input for the name of the patient.
Okay.
Let's check it out. We are. Patient's
Mm.
name, we can put it in there and submit it.
Mm. Cool.
Let's continue. We can add validation rules. So in Laravel, normally you would want to do this within a controller, but all we need to do is just use double Copilot is going to be turned off. It
Um,
is not being very helpful. Max length of 255. And this is our validation. And if we fail this validation, it'll tell us. That'll
mhm,
fill out our name, or if we fill it more than 255 characters.
mhm,
We can add a second field. So fields can be different types. So this is a text input, but we could have then a select to then select the type of the patient.
mhm.
And a select has options, just like in HTML. And this is an array, key value array. The keys are what gets stored in the database, and the values are the labels that get
Yeah,
output on the front end.
yeah.
So let's say cat, dog, rabbit. Do you have any others? I have one more.
Squirrels,
Sorry?
um, duck, fish, you know.
Fish. Yeah, let's add a fish. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know what they're going to do for a fish in a vet, but
I don't know. We got a
let's,
fish.
let's see. Maybe the fish
Yeah,
is going to have some very fiddly surgery.
yeah.
Required.
That's a bad ad. That's,
Right, let's see what this select looks like then. So we've got our cat, dog,
okay.
rabbit, fish. We can select one. We can add the name of the patient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we probably want to replace the fish with a hamster or something.
And a
So
hamster, right? Okay.
yeah.
That's still fiddly surgery, but
Yeah, at least
less risky,
it's
I
not in
think.
water.
At least
So,
I have to operate underwater.
yeah.
Okay. Um, let's go on to the next one. So we need a date of birth picker.
Okay.
So let's use a date picker.
Wow.
It's another component. Date of birth is also required, and it can't be um, later than today
Mm-hmm.
because pets can't be born in the future. So max date now.
Future pets.
Um, yeah, now.
Mhm. Okay, that makes sense. Wow.
And now we can select a date of
Mm,
birth.
I
Yeah,
like this.
back to our code. The last, I think maybe it's one of the last things we need to basically select to select the owner.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have any owners now, but I'll tell you what exactly we're going to do with that in a minute.
Okay.
So the owner ID is our column on the database, and we're going to link this to a relationship. And
Mm.
Filament is able to detect the type of the relationship and then fetch all of the owners from the relationship without us having to tell it manually what the options are.
Wow.
Um, owner name. So the owner is the name of the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and the name is the column on the related table that we want to display within the select. So in this case, it's the owner's name,
Mm-hmm.
and this is also required.
Yeah.
Show you what this looks like. Basically, it's a select with no options because there's no owners yet.
Mm-hmm.
You can make this searchable. So
Wow.
this means that for long data sets, you're not loading all of them into the HTML at once. You only load the first 50 in, or you can just load them in when you're typing. Um, and we do that with searchable. And then if we want to load it in the first 50, then we just do preload. And preload will first 50 and populate them. Now, this is where we're going to first meet our nested form components.
Mm-hmm.
So I mentioned that you could nest form components within like a card, as like a layout thing, or maybe like a grid. You can also nest form components within a select. And those form components can be used to create new options for that select. So we can
Mm-hmm.
essentially create owners by clicking a button on the select and then creating an owner from there. And because we have access to the relationship defined, we know exactly where to save the owner, where to attach it to. So let's add a form within the select.
Mm-hmm.
And that's using the create option form. This is just another array with form components. We can copy the name, copy the email. Let's override the label for this because I want it to be called email address
Okay.
and make it required and max length 255, and it needs to be an email address. So
Yeah.
this changes the input type on a mobile keyboard as well as adds backend validation and front-end validation. Let's also add a phone number field. Again, it's a text input. We want this to be phone number. We don't need the max length because we have a special validation rule for
Mm-hmm.
telephone numbers that ensures they aren't over 16 or so characters anyway, and that's the tel. And this will also change the format of the keyboard on mobile as well.
Wow. Handy.
Now you see we have this form within our select, and I'll show you what this looks like. We have now a plus button next to our select. We can click on it and we can create a new owner from here. So I'm going to be an owner,
Wow. That's really handy.
and then we create the owner and it's automatically selected within our
Mm-hmm.
select input. We can then create another owner. Maybe Taylor owns a pet.
Okay. Okay.
He has a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Now Taylor selected as the owner. We can select between Dan and Taylor as our owner.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, then you could go on and make an owner resource if you wanted to then manage all the owners and delete the owners and manage the patients for the owners and everything. But let's leave it like this for now. That is it for this form. It's pretty simple. Let's create a patient. I have a dog at home called Bella, and we don't actually know when she was born, but she was probably
Mm-hmm.
born around 2010.
Wow.
Um, so let's create one. So that's successfully created, and we now have a patient in our database. And we've been taken all the way to the edit page. This is
Mm-hmm.
where you'll then be able to manage the treatments for the patient. But before we go into that, we're going to set up the table for patients.
Okay.
We want 4 text columns in our table.
Mm-hmm.
Columns are set up quite similar to form components. So you have an object for each column, and they get added to this columns array. Let's add 4 text columns. One for the name, type, the date of birth, also one for the owner's name. And to do that, we just need to use dot syntax. I cannot spell owner.
You can. Yeah.
Owner.name.
Oh, nice. So it's
And
just
this will
cool.
automatically eager load the owners into our table so that we
Mm-hmm.
don't use n+1 queries or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see what this looks like. So we can see the name, the type, the date of birth, and the owner name.
Mm-hmm.
We can also make these columns searchable. And all you do for that is you just add searchable to the columns as a method, like you do on a form component. Or to make them, well, let's see what searchable looks like first. Here, so you can search Bella or not. And Dan also works. Now
Nice.
let's also sort by the date of birth because you might want to find the oldest patients in the system or the youngest patients. So let's sort here. So just make it sortable. What this does is it adds sort functionality. So if we had more than one patient, then we'd be able to see them move in the list by clicking this column.
Mm-hmm.
We can also add a filter to filter the different types of patients within our table. So let's add another patient. So Barney, this is my old cat.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say he was born 1997 or something.
Wow.
And I also own that. We now see on our table we've got 2. And let's add a filter so that we can filter only dogs or only cats or only fish. What was it? Hamsters. That was it.
Mhm.
Rabbits and hamsters.
Hamsters.
So to add a filter to our table, we add it to the filters array.
Mhm.
And this is just going to be a filter object. We're going to make it, and we're going to put the name of the column within our. That's what we're going to call it. Show you what a filter looks like by default in Filament. It's a checkbox. We can replace this by providing our own form to this filter, and we can render whatever form component we want within this filter, and then do as we wish with that data that we get from the form. However, Filament does have a select filter component, and this is just a shortcut for doing exactly that. So we can just pass options like we did to select, and just copy them. And this will allow us to filter through the types, and it should reflect on our data without us having to do anything to the eloquent query.
Oh, nice. Wow.
So let's just get dogs, just get cats. We can even remove the filter by clicking this little cross button. That's that. So we
Hmm.
now have our table pretty much set up. We could go into more depth, filtering by owner, filtering by date of birth with a date range. Maybe we'll do that later. But for now, this is fine. So we now have our table and our form,
Mhm.
and we now want to be able to manage treatments for this patient. So I think the best interface for this would be adding a table below the patient form
Mhm.
that then allows you to add, edit, delete treatments without leaving the page. Because I
Okay.
think that would be the most efficient for whoever's using the system. Maybe they need to add multiple treatments and don't want to have to keep on going back and forth between different pages.
Mhm.
Um, Maybe they have the owner on the phone and they want to quickly look up what treatments their pet has had.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's add a table below here. And to do that in Filament, we have to create what's called a relation manager. A
Okay.
relation manager is a component that is essentially a table that you would then attach to a resource. And a relation manager is like a little sub resource within this resource.
Okay.
So let's go back. And we're going to use the Filament make relation manager command. I'll show you exactly what this does. So first it asks you for the resource. So in this case, it's going to be the owner resource. No, not the owner, the patient
Yeah.
resource.
The patient resource.
And this is where the relation manager is going to be put. We
Mhm.
want to find the relationship. So in this case, it's going to be treatments. And finally, we want the title attribute, which is going to be the name of the column that we use to identify treatments from one another.
Mhm.
So in this case, it's going to be our treatment description.
Mhm.
It now says make sure to register the relation in patient resource get relations. So if we look in
Okay.
our app filament directory resources, we see our patient resource. Let's open that. We also see our patient resource directory, and this contains our pages,
Mhm.
and also our new relation manager. Let's register the relation manager for this patient by adding it into this get relations array, our resource. This is now being registered. And if we go back to the browser, we can see that our treatments are below the patients, the
Nice.
patient form.
Mhm.
We can now make a new treatment. When there are treatments, we can then edit, add, delete, bulk delete them, attach them to different patients, and everything.
Mm.
So let's go back to our code. I'm going to full screen this. Okay.
Mhm.
Firstly, let's look at what we have because we already have a text input that Filament's added for us. Um, this opens in a modal. I think this needs to be full width. So let's change the width of this by adding a column span and passing in full. And essentially, all of our form components by default are in a 2-column grid. So
Mm-hmm.
all this is doing is it's telling us that this needs to span the full width of the grid. We could also do 2, but I think full is more descriptive of what it does.
Yeah.
Let's now add a notes field. So we're going to introduce a new form component, which is the text area, very similar to HTML, and it's going to be our notes. Max length is going to be 65535, which is the default MySQL text length.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also going to make this span full. Finally, let's add our price column. So our price is going to be using a text input. This is going to be numeric text input, which changes the column layout on mobile and also validates. And we want the max value of this to be 42949672.95. This is the maximum unsigned integer value that you can store in a migration. Let's have a look at what the price field looks like, because I think we need to then add a prefix for the currency symbol.
Right.
Yeah, so this is what the price input looks like. Let's add a $sign before the price
Mm-hmm.
um, prefix. And now let's create a new cast for this, because obviously this is going to be stored in a decimal, but we want on the model for it to be stored in an integer. So an eloquent cast can be made with the PHP artisan make cast, and we're going to call it the money cast because we can then reuse it. Money cast. We're going to transform the integer stored in the database into a float inside this method. So we're going to return the value divided by 100. We probably also want to cast this to a float, so use float val for that. We also want to round this so that it's stored in 2 decimal places. So round, and let's add a precision of 2. This is going to return a float. I would do the same, but the inverse. We want to make the value times by 100, but we also want to cast this to a float as well and round it. And our cast, this is the cast that's now going to do those calculations for us. We don't have to worry about it at all. So let's add this cast to the treatment model in our cast array, price column, and money cast. Now we need to add the table to list treatments in, because obviously we only have a description here, but we can also add the price. So table column text column again, price. This should be sortable, and also we have a method to format prices by it with like a $sign and the correct rounding and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and that's money, and we pass in the name of the currency, which is USD in this case. And we also, because we're storing it in the database, we want to convert it as well. This just tells Filament that we've already done the casting ourselves. Filament doesn't need to intervene with that, so pass that in.
Nice.
Now we can add new treatment. 500. That's on our table.
Mhm.
We go back, we can then edit the treatment, update the price, for example. That's back. Add notes,
Wow.
save it, done. Delete, maybe add prescription. We can even bulk delete all of these treatments at once, or just
Mhm.
delete selected. And yeah, you can then manage treatments without leaving the page.
Ooh.
Um, the last thing we might want to do is add the date of when the treatment happened to this table. That might be useful. So let's add another text column, create that, and we have a special date time method to format this.
Oh.
So yeah, that's now formatted. Let's probably do the same with the patient birthday as well.
Mhm.
Uh, patient resource, their birth should be.
Okay. Nice.
Last thing I want to go through, which is kind of the last pillar of filament development, is widgets.
No.
Widgets are components that you can add to your dashboard.
Mhm.
They can display stats, charts, whatever. Um, you can also add them to other pages. They don't have to be on the dashboard, but most people would add them to a dashboard, and it's like a good overview of what the records in your system do.
Yeah.
So let's add some stats about our patients. So maybe count the number of the different patients. PHP Artisan make filament widget. We're going to put the name of this as the patient type overview. Um, we don't want a resource because it's just going to be displayed on the dashboard instead, not on a specific resource. Um, let's come in and we see that a new widget class has been created here.
Mhm.
Um, this is essentially free reign. You could go into this view, so it's the patient type overview, and just add any content you want here, and it will be displayed in your dashboard. This is a live wire component, so you could add interactive stats here if you wanted. But what we want to do is we want to use one of our pre-built widgets. You don't have to build a chart or stats card yourself. We include that for you. So let's use that instead of a custom widget. So instead of make filament widget, we also use the stats overview flag. This is our patient type overview again. And you'll see here a view wasn't created because Filament handles the view for you. And this time, instead of a view property, we have this get cards method. And instead of extending our blank widget, we extend the stats overview widget
Nice.
class. Let's now add cards. So we're going to have a card for each patient type. So a card, let's do cats first. And we're going to count the number of cats. So patient, query, the type is a cat. And we're going to count the number of cats. See what that looks like. Now, so that we've got number of cats.
Wow.
Let's add dogs and rabbits. Hamsters. We have a count. You can add little mini charts to these widgets. So on our Filament demo, we do have charts within these, and you can add little subtext and headings and stuff. But in this demo, we don't need that.
Mhm.
We will create a new chart though. below this, and we're going to have like treatments over time, for example.
Yeah.
Let's add a new widget. This time it's not going to be a stats overview, it's going to be a chart widget. And it's going to be called treatments chart. And I think this should be a line chart.
Yeah. 3.
Show you what this creates. Is this a new type of widget? There's no cards in this widget. We just have this data and the heading for the chart. So we're going to call this chart treatments. And to calculate the data, we're going to use a package, an external package from FlowFrame called Laravel Trend, but you could do these calculations yourself if you want. This is just an easy way to do it. So
Okay.
composer require FlowFrame
Now let's try.
Laravel Trend. This is what we recommend within the Filament docs as well, so you can refer back to that. To create a new trend with this package, you first use the trend class and you pass in your model. Class does all the calculations for you. We're going to get the number of treatments between, start with now, a year ago today. I'm going to end with today. And then we're going to do per month. So we're going to group number of treatments per month, and then we're going to count the number of treatments. This is going to be stored in data, and I'll show you what this does. This will give us an array of these trend values, and it will basically tell us each month. So 11 November 2021, there were no treatments. But if we look here, we have got a treatment in our database for November 2022. Let's transform this into our chart data. We use chart.js for rendering charts, so this chart data is in exactly the same format as chart.js. With that, you need data sets. This is basically our different lines on our line graph. Each data set is one line. For our first data set, we're just going to pass in the name of the data set, which is going to be treatments. Maybe you want to track treatments over time, patients over time. They would be different data sets. Our data for these treatments are data, and we need to map these trend values. As you saw that these are trend value objects, not integers. Trend value. I'm going to map these to their aggregate property. Finally, we want to label the x-axis. So we're going to pass in the labels here. Map them. This is the date from here. So I'm just going to display that on the x-axis.
Yeah.
As you can see, we've now got a chart each month and how many treatments occurred in that month. If we added treatments before months, that would display on the chart. And that is essentially the little demo I'm going to give today.
Yeah.
This is going to be converted into a blog post, and it will be available in our documentation as one of the first things you see when you first use Filament. And that will be released when we release Filament version 3 in a few months.
Nice. Like, we just built a really robust admin panel in less than an hour. That's magic, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It is a real time saver. I'm
Yeah.
really
And
proud of how it's all turned out and all our different features and how we've managed to use a lot of cover a lot of areas of our framework in under an
Yeah.
hour. So
Yeah, sure. You actually covered a bunch. I love the forms handling. It's
mm,
brilliant. That was amazing. And where you added like for the owner, the little plus button right there that could easily make it create a form. That was just like wow, like I can't imagine having to build all this from scratch.
mm.
That's not an hour job. That's like a month or more. Really. Like no, like thinking about it, like just handling the styling alone with the quirks of styling, responsiveness, and all the JavaScript, the modal. That's a lot of work you're saving.
And that's exactly why Filament exists, and why all of our team works so hard on this, because we all have a vision that we shouldn't have to rebuild the same UI between projects.
Mm-hmm.
Every project basically has forms.
Mm-hmm.
Every project has data tables. Every
Yeah.
project has modals and notifications. And having to build that several times, potentially several times a year for
Yeah.
different apps, is a
Mm.
waste of time.
Yes, it
And
is.
Filament allows you to abstract that away. And you can use these forms and the tables and everything in your own app. You don't have to be constrained to the admin panel.
Mm-hmm.
These were all built outside the admin panel, and the admin panel is just using them.
Yeah.
We have detailed instructions on our website about how you can add forms to any Livewire component that you have in your app. You don't have to use our admin panel.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a way to group all of the products together and build apps very quickly without having to worry about the layout or anything. So, yeah,
Yeah. Thank you. So just one quick question at the back of my mind is
yeah,
UI customizations for like the basic one. How do you like theme this to like your brand, for example?
sure. So,
Mm.
we have, I'll show you what we have available
Okay.
in our docs. Um, in the appearance section, first thing is changing the brand logo. So, this is basically overriding a Laravel view, and
Okay.
basically just replacing it with your own logo, and that will be
Oh,
displayed here.
okay.
Um,
Cool.
you can also enable dark mode,
Mm-hmm.
and you can make the sidebar collapsible and stuff. With regards to fitting it to your brand, we recommend that you use CSS classes. So
Okay.
if you look at the Filament HTML, you'll see that we have many filament classes. So filament forms component container, filament. Where's this one? This one should be filament forms text input.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think should be.
And essentially, you can then target all the text inputs within that with your own CSS
Mm-hmm.
and override any rounding or fonts or anything.
Mm-hmm.
You can also build a theme. So, building a theme is allowing you to define your own Tailwind configuration.
Oh
So, this
yes.
will allow you to change the primary color, for example, to be blue instead of yellow. You could
Yeah.
change, slightly tweak the colors of notifications and errors. Um, you can add basically anything to your theme. And in version 3, this is going to be even easier. You won't have to use the Tailwind configuration to change the font. You won't have to use the Tailwind configuration to change the primary color. That will all be done from within PHP.
Wow.
And that is one of our major things in V3 is the UI will be very customizable
Mm-hmm.
um, without having to touch CSS.
Yeah.
In addition, we are exploring the idea of providing many different themes that then users can install into their apps.
Mm-hmm.
So without having to build it themselves, they could install a theme that makes everything square, or a theme that follows Tailwind UI, or other UI component packages, and then they can use that then to style it to their own needs without having to do CSS at all. And that reiterates that you don't have to leave PHP to use Filament. Um, that would all be handled by us. That is still in consideration within our
Yeah.
team.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to be probably an official product, um, and maybe it will be ready for when we start releasing V3. Maybe it'll come a bit later, but that's one of our main goals
Yeah.
in the future.
Awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe there's no special thing that has to be done in order to deploy these projects. You could just deploy like any other Laravel project, right?
Yeah, it's essentially just a Laravel project.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it works out of the box on Forge, Vapor,
Mm-hmm.
any of the common platforms. Obviously, I don't know what people's Nginx configurations are like, but if you
Yeah.
follow the Laravel recommendations, then it
Mm.
works with that. It also works with things like Octane.
Mm.
Uh, so you can use Octane with this as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. So, yeah, I think we're good at time and you really covered everything. Thank you so much, Dan, for your
Very well.
time. Like,
Hope you enjoy.
and yeah, and you were great with the explanation of each code and what it does. It was just perfect. I believe anyone watching this, because I myself, I believe I understand everything based on your explanation and they were top notch. So, yeah, before
Good to
you
hear.
go, do you have anything like to plug or to say, for coming here? You have the
Hmm.
ability to plug anything at all for being our guest today teaching us.
Well, I'm not selling anything at the moment.
No,
That's what I'd
okay.
say now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can keep up to date with Filament
Mm-hmm,
on GitHub. We have a Twitter account. It's at Filament PHP. I also do more personal news about Filament. So maybe I'm working on a new feature. I'll share it on my Twitter, which is at Dan J Harrin.
mm-hmm,
Um, and yeah, find us on Discord as well. We have a very active community on Discord. So if you have any questions, the URL is filamentphp.com/discord, and that
yeah.
will invite you to our Discord community. We have 2,000 or 3,000 members there, so someone will be able to help you if you do get stuck.
Mm-hmm,
Um, and yeah, no
yeah.
question is too silly.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you. So I'm definitely going to add all those info in the description below in the video. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.